Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Whitney Van Laningham, and you just rolled a nat 20 on your history check of Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves, because I'm about to break it all down for you. This movie is beyond jam-packed with Easter eggs, game mechanics, and lore, so today I'm taking you frame by frame through the movie to point out all the D&D tales you might have missed. Get suited up in all the gear you need for your campaign by checking out all the great merch at nerdriot.shop. It's a great way to support all the awesome work we do here at New Rockstars, and to look good while you're doing it. Find all of our awesome merch options at nerdriot.shop. The movie opens up at Revel's End, a prison built in the Frozen Far region of the Northwest on the continent Faerun. This place holds only the most serious and hardcore criminals, like Gorge the Hobgoblin and this Yuan-ti Abomination prisoner. It's here that we meet our heroes, Edgin Darvis and Holga Kilgore, two prisoners brought before the Absolution Council to appeal a pardon for their crimes. Human Counselor Voss Anderton, Halfling Jill Torbo, and Silver Dragonborn Kriv Norixius are all characters introduced in the 5e module Rime of the Frost Maiden, while Jarnathan is an original character created just for this movie. Jarnathan is an Aarakocra, a race of birdmen. In true D&D fashion, Edgin introduces his character in the same way that a player would by giving us a long, detailed backstory, including his race and class. Edgin is a human bard who used to be a harper. In D&D lore, the harpers are a scattered network of spies who advocate for equality and oppose abuse of power. During his time with the harpers, we see Edgin trip a Githyanki thief with a Bride of Frankenstein-esque streak of white in their hair, much like their 5e Monster Manual depiction. When Edgin finds his wife dying, you can see that the Red Wizards of Thay left behind their fabled blade. You'll find this weapon and a few other movie-exclusive items, as well as stat blocks for the characters, published digitally as a promotional tie-in. They aren't a perfect one-to-one to the film, but they will help us identify spells as we move through this breakdown. Back to the flashback, there's a dragonfly at Zia's funeral as Edgin burns his harper seal. This animal symbolically shows up every time Edgin thinks about Zia throughout the film, until he finally learns to let her memory go. Edgin met Holga, a human barbarian from the Elk tribe, in a tavern, most common place for D&D parties to sync up. Holga's Elk tribe can be found in several D&D materials, and first appeared in 1988's Savage Frontier sourcebook. Holga helped raise Edgin's daughter Kira, and the three of them, along with their party, Simon, a sorcerer, Forge, a rogue, and Sofina, a wizard of Thay, steal from the rich to survive. During one of their sprees, Holga steals an amulet of invisibility for Kira. This item is based on D&D's Ring of Invisibility, which allows the player to disappear until the ring is removed or they attack. In another heist, we see Simon cast the spell Fog Cloud. He's also equipped with a bag of holding, a magical sack that's bigger on the inside, kind of like a TARDIS. This useful bag is why Edgin repeatedly asks Simon to hold on to items throughout the film. Unfortunately, their last mission went horribly wrong. Determined to bring Zia back from the dead, the party broke into a harper's hideout at Corrin's Keep, an island stronghold in the Sea of Swords. While Corrin's Keep was made just for the movie, it's likely located in the Corrin Archipelago, a chain of islands found west of the city of Waterdeep. Peep the harper symbol on the door as they enter. Edgin strokes a magical cord on it to get inside. Among the valuable items inside Corrin's Keep were an alchemy jug, a container that can create and hold any liquid, the tablet of reawakening, and the horn of beckoning death. In the chaos of this scene, I also saw what looks like a blue cubic gate. When Edgin fails a perception check, he trips the wire attached to the Tablet of Reawakening, alerting the harpers at Corrin's Keep to their thievery. Sofina upcasts the spell Chain Lightning to hit 4 targets. She then casts Time Stop, a 9th level spell that briefly stops the flow of time for everyone but the caster. 9th level spells are the highest level spells in D&D, and can only be stopped by a 9th level counterspell, which explains why Simon lacks the power in this moment to stop her. Before the Absolution Council can announce their ruling, Edgin and Holga tackle Jarnathan and force him out of the Hall of Absolution's window. It turns out, however, that Edgin successfully rolled his charisma check with the council. They were totally gonna pardon him after listening to his backstory. This plays out like a table not trusting a modest persuasion roll of like a 14, then jumping to plan B before the DM can organically reveal their success. I love all the little moments like this where we can feel the characters rolling their ability checks. Edgin and Holga ride on horseback past Mount Houghton now, a volcano in the Crags mountain range. Next, we see a classic D&D map that shows their journey on their way to the city of Neverwinter. When they arrive, the town square is decorated in banners displaying the emblem of Neverwinter and the logo for the High Sun games. Although Lord Neverember outlawed the games 3 decades ago, he's in a coma now, and Forge Fitzwilliams wants to party. In D&D lore, Lord Daggalt Neverember is the 15th century ruler of Neverwinter who used his family name and personal fortune to restore the city to its former glory. After briefly reuniting reuniting with Kira, Edgin and Holga learn that Forge is manipulating Kira against her family. During their meeting, Forge insists that his tea is too hot and asks Sofina to cool it for him. Sofina's cold, gross fingy is one of the many uses of the prestidigitation cantrip, which can chill and flavor 1 cubic foot of non-living material. Forge informs them that he intends to keep Edgin's daughter and have them sent back to prison, and Sofina traps the two adventurers with the spell Transmute Rock to Mud. This trap also mirrors a scene in the 2000s Dungeons & Dragons movie when Marlon Wayans' character Snails gets sucked into a rug that turns to magical quicksand. Forge also mentions visitors from Waterdeep and Baldur's Gate, 2 large sister cities of Neverwinter that also sit on the Sword Coast. As we transition into the next scene, we briefly see a pair of rust monsters fighting over a hunk of metal. Although Forge's officer, Blackwood, tries to decapitate Edgin and Holga on Sofina's discreet orders, Holga clearly rolls a series of nat 20s on her escape against the Neverwinter Guard, and her proficiency with impromptu weaponry shows that she's got the tavern brawler's feat. She manages to steal Blackwood's Darksteel Great Axe, which was forged by Gellerin Goldhand Foehammer, a shield dwarf mastersmith who first appeared in 1983's Volo's Guide to the North. Darksteel itself is a hardy material derived from the starfall ore of meteorites. Although Edgin finally knocks Blackwood out with his loot, it's pretty clear that he did not roll very well because he spends like 98% of the encounter trying to break free of his restraints. After escaping, Tribor, a trading town to the west of Neverwinter, is actually their next stop. There they find Simon, swindling an audience out of their riches by distracting them with lackluster sorcery. Like Sofina, Simon is casting the cantrip Prestidigitation to light a small flame on his hand, as well as fill the area with the scent of freshly cut grass. Fans of Critical Role will note that this is potentially a subtle nod to fresh cut grass, the name of the Eormaton cleric played by Sam Riegel. Simon also uses the Mage Hand cantrip, likely invisible thanks to the telekinetic feat, to steal from the crowd. During his distraction, he uses the Minor Illusion cantrip to make himself slightly blurry, and makes reference to the second level spell Blur as the quote-unquote easier version of his trick. Being a wild magic sorcerer, Simon has innate but unpredictable magic, and when he rolls poorly, unexpected spells are cast. This is how he mistakenly casts Reverse Gravity. Simon is gagged for a moment, which prevents him from casting magic, as a number of spells require verbal components. Additionally, the movie makes several other spell mechanic references, including line of sight and concentration. D&D and other tabletop RPGs are a lot of fun, but if you're trying to play online, there are better ways to spend your time than digging through forums and Discord servers. If you've never played before, it can be a lot, especially when you really just want it to start playing. Start Playing is a site with thousands of games you can join right now without having to do all the legwork of setting up a game. You can find your next game group or game master on Start Playing. They make it easy for players to search for games that fit their schedule. You can search by campaign or one-shot, type of game system, day and time you want to play, price, VTT platform, and even if a campaign is brand new. Plus, you can see verified reviews on Game Masters. This helps players find the right GM for their playstyle. Me and Tommy used Start Playing to find Claire, who led Tommy's gentle giant of a bard and my Harangon rats on an adventure to win a wings eating contest at a local tavern.
Okay, Rats is going to take several chicken wings, place them in Pip's hand, and then she's going to slip them through the table crack so that Pip has been freed and has several wings in his hands.
I will have you make, I suppose, a sleight of hand check.
Oh, 26, bitch!
Whoa.
I get Pip the out of there!
You could be in an adventure of your own as soon as you finish this video if you want. To start playing with Start Playing, go to startplaying.games. If you're starting a new account, click the link in the description of this video and you'll get a $10 credit to make your first game even easier. As the thieves flee through a field of grain, several axe beaks can be seen. They're aggressive, flightless birds found in the D&D Monster Manual. Simon leads the gang to Doric, a tiefling druid who is cast out of her human parents' home as an abomination. According to D&D lore, although tieflings are human-born, they're infused with a touch of the fiendish planes, most often through descent from fiends, including devils and demons. With no home to return to, Doric joined the Emerald Enclave, a widespread group of wilderness survivalists who preserve the natural order, rooting out unnatural threats. To save another member of the Emerald Enclave, Doric hides in the form of one of the guard's horses, wild shaping into an owlbear just in time to stop her friend from being killed. detailed. Technically, druids can't use wild shape to transform into an owlbear according to 5e rules, but it's clear that the director masters John Francis Daly and Jonathan Goldstein are down with the rule of cool. While our adventurers nail down their plan in yet another tavern, Zastam appears in the shadows back at Castle Neverwinter, speaking to Sofina. In D&D lore, Zastam was a powerful wizard of Thay. He was a part of the Council of Zulkers, who each had mastery over a school of magic. Zastam was the Lich Master of Necromancy, and this film gives us a closer look at his canon coup of the Nation of Thay. According to the credits, the other Zulker he sneaks up behind is Dimitra Flass, the Master of Illusions. In modern time, Zastam is apparently the BBEG pulling the strings behind Sophia's actions to extend his influence over the Sword Coast. To hide her loyalty to the Red Wizards, Sofina wears a cloak of many fashions that can shift its coloring. Doric wild shapes into a fly to spy on Forge, Sofina, and Forge's wealthy companions Caldwell and Parados, as they discuss their potential upcoming winnings at the High Sun Games. Sofina reveals that the door to the vault is marked with Mordenkainen's seal, a spell created by the Archmage Mordenkainen, who's one of the strongest wizards in D&D lore, and the player character of the game's creator, Gary Gygax. This seal mirrors the shape of Mordenkainen's staff and is unbreakable, unless our heroes can find the Helmet of Disjunction. Interestingly, the Helm of Disjunction was inspired by another of Mordenkainen's spells, Mordenkainen's Disjunction. This spell reduces magical items to their most basic counterparts, effectively canceling them. Doric's escape has her breaking wild shape rules once more, casting it 7 times in one day to become a fly, a mouse twice, a falcon, a cat, an axebeak, and finally a deer. Chasing her, Sofina casts Misty Step to teleport, and what looks to be her version of Melf's Minute Meteors for projectiles.
Minute man. I turn small. Think!
You. After briefly stopping by her ex-husband's house, Halfling Bradley Cooper, aka Marleman, Holga learns that he has a type, human barbarians. His new wife Gwyn mentions squashing a pack of bullywugs, frogmen from D&D lore. Holga takes Marleman's walking stick back, and later, Simon rolls a better Arcana check to identify it as a Hither-Thither staff, an ancient relic created for Honor Among Thieves. At the Elk Tribe's burial ground, north in the Evermoors, Simon uses his Deathly Token to cast the spell Speak with Dead. This Deathly Token features the symbol of Kelimfor, aka the Lord of the Dead and the Judge of the Damned. Above the heroes in this scene are the Tears of Saloon, an asteroid cluster that orbits the world of Toril alongside the moon. Both the moon and the Tears are named after moon goddess Saloon. A handful of movie original corpses recount their battle tales, recalling the Black Dragon Rancor that the Cult of the Dragon commanded to attack the Evermoors. The Cult of the Dragon has been around since 2nd edition, but Rancor was created just for Honor Among Thieves. That said, Black Dragons are the meanest dragons in D&D lore, and spew acid breath. When questioning the last corpse, Edgin asks for his favorite book, and he mentions the Thang Tome of Lycanthus, a rare magical book that appears in the 2006 novel Blackstaff. The dead guy leads them to Xenk, who clearly has an equally tragic backstory to Edgin. As a child, he witnessed Zastam's coup firsthand, watching helplessly as the most powerful necromantic lich use the Horn of Beckoning Death to transform his loved ones into undead warriors. Zastam's Thay generals cast a wall of force to hold their victims in place while becoming undead. Xenk dedicated his life to becoming a harper, vowing to keep the Helmet of Disjunction safe from harm. Xenk is also a paladin, a D&D class that swears to uphold an oath of righteousness. His resume, according to the party, includes fighting the evil clerics of the storm god Talos, aiding Holga's cousin in the Great Sand Sea, and rumor has it that he even fought a beholder once, one of D&D's most iconic and deadly monsters. In the village west of the Evermoors, Morbin's Shield, Xenk saves a baby tabaxi, aka cat person, from being eaten by an enormous fish. To do this, he casts the spell Animal Friendship. He then stops to help out a down-on-their-luck dragonborn. We also get a quick look at the long tongues of a giant clam here. After joining up with Xenk, the party passes a giant spider and drops down into an orifice located in Cryptgarden Forest to access the Underdark. Simon volunteers to go last. This is a subtle nod to marching orders, the way that players decide the order in which their characters travel. The Underdark itself is a vast network of underground tunnels and caverns that lies beneath Faerun. Home to countless horrifying monsters, creatures, and unpleasant enemies, the Underdark is extremely dangerous to travel through, in part due to its lack of lighting. The only light that exists in the Underdark comes from glowing fungi, which can be seen briefly as our heroes pass by the hanging city of Dalblend. In D&D lore, Dalblend is an abandoned gnomish city and home to Dour Gothoth, a fearsome Dracolich. Along this passageway, the party encounters several intellect devourers, monsters from D&D lore that consume a creature's mind and memories, forcing its host to become a puppet under its control. As servants of the Mind Flayer, these walking brains are incredibly deadly to players with high intelligence. Here's another little D&D inside joke. Xenk explaining the extremely intricate puzzle they need to solve in order to cross the bridge has exactly the same energy of a passionate, excited DM. But like a lot of players, Simon cuts off Xenk's long-ass list of well-thought-out instructions by accidentally tripping the mechanism to collapse the bridge. Check out those statues surrounding Xenk and Dralis during their fight, sculpted in the image of the Underdark-dwelling dwarves of the same name. In D&D lore, Dralis is a powerful female Red Wizard of Thay, and one of Zastam's most loyal followers. In Honor Among Thieves, Dralis is one of Zastam's undead warrior assassins, converted and transformed along with Xenk's people during the coup. As a paladin, Xenk's divine sense alerts him to Dralis and his undead warrior's danger before they strike. Dralis uses the cantrip Green Flame Blade in battle, but although Xenk temporarily defeats him, Dralis and the other Thay assassins pop back up like zombie daisies due to their inability to fully die. Xenk also enchants his weapon with a smite spell like Blinding Smite, but because he doesn't hit Dralis before he's disarmed, it doesn't do much help. But even undead red wizards can't escape the mighty and tubby Themberchild, a red dragon from D&D lore who uses fire breath to light the forges of the Grey Dwarves of Gracklsta. In exchange, a group of psionic Duragar priests obeyed his every whim, bringing him treasure and a bottomless all-you-can-eat people buffet to snack on. My favorite part of the whole movie is when he just rolls around like a pug snacking on wizards. I know he's a baddie, but I would die for this hungry, chunky baby. Let him eat me, it would be so cute. Here's a couple fun little D&D moments. As the group realizes that they're about to run into a dead end with Themberchild's gaping maw hot on their tails, Doric does the movie equivalent of rolling a perception check to find a means of escape. She must have rolled highest because she's the one who spots the raised platform that Simon portals them up to. Themberchild also can't repeatedly use his breath weapon in this scene because he has to wait for it to recharge. I also love that Xenk leaves the party after completing this dungeon crawl. It feels just like the moment your older brother's buddy has to get back home for dinner after doing a guest spot in your home campaign. When Simon attempts to attune to the helm for the first time, he's greeted in what appears to be the astral plane by his great-great-grandfather, Elminster Omar. As one of the most powerful spellcasters in existence, Omar learned every common spell in the realms, gaining psionic powers and the abilities to heal himself and shapeshift. When playing D&D, a character has to spend a short rest attuning to a new magic item before its magical properties can be used, which is essentially what Simon does while the crew takes a snooze. In another move straight out of your home D&D game, the party gets creative during the big carriage heist of the film. There's so many dice rolls you can feel here, including the failed perception checks from the DM's side of the table. After their success, Simon pulls sending stones out of his bag of holding, telling the party that they'll only work as walkie-talkies for an hour. According to D&D lore, sending stones allow communication over vast distances. These little babies even get good reception across other planes of existence. During Edgin's bardic-inspiring speech to rally Simon, he mentions a time in the city of Loudwater where he could only cast the spell Spider Climb after being attacked by Joylam's dogs. Edgin also reminds him of the time where the party was robbing the Spear of Aoth Fezin, a Thayan warrior, and Simon was able to cast Stone Skin. More fun D&D shenanigans! Simon clearly does a terrible roll as they try to distract the Neverwinter guards, which causes the illusion he casts of Edgin playing the lute to malfunction. It dissipates once touched, just like in the game. Also, one of the guards mentions the 9 hells in this scene, home plane to lawful evil beings and devils. Each of the deadly 9 hells reflects a different malevolent characteristic of its ruler. At this point in the adventure, each character begins to perform their individual contributing tasks, working together to gain access to Forge's treasure vault to steal the Tablet of Reawakening. Obviously, this is also classic fare for a game of D&D. Each member of the party has to roll to advance on their specific missions in order to help the whole team. The DM even levels up Holga's favorite weapon during her scene. Simon, upon attuning to his helmet, casts out a wave of magic that disables magical items, including the seal and a series of floating drift globes. After the whole party is trapped by the spell Evard's Black Tentacles, Edgin rolls Charisma to convince Forge to let them compete in the High Sun Games. During the competition, the gang runs into another party straight out of the 80s Dungeons & Dragons cartoon. Hank the Ranger, Eric the Cavalier, Diana the Acrobat, Presto the Magician, Sheila the Thief, and Bobby the Barbarian can all be seen in their brightly colored costumes during this sequence. maze. Inside the maze, High Sun gamers are faced with deadly creatures and items, such as the Displacer Beast, a Mimic, and a gelatinous cube. Displacer Beasts are large predatory cat-like creatures equipped with 2 deadly tentacles sprouting from their shoulders. They use their ability to bend light to make themselves appear a few feet away from where they actually are. We see this effect in full force when the Displacer Beast takes out a dwarf in the maze. Holga almost gets got by a Mimic, a monster with the ability to disguise itself as an inanimate object, most commonly a chest, in order to get the jump on their victims. Gelatinous cubes are also extremely deadly, engulfing their victims and dissolving them in acid. In their escape from Forge, Simon casts Control Water to push the boat out to sea. But once they see that Sofina has started the beckoning death, they sail back into the city. On the outside of the arena, there are 2 statues of Lord Nashar Alagondar, a former adventurer and ruler of Neverwinter, and Lord Haluith Never, one of the early founders of Neverwinter in D&D lore. As our adventurers fight Sofina, we see a ton of really cool spells cast. First, Sofina casts Fireballs and Meteor Swarm on the party. Luckily, Simon casts a shielding spell that protects them from the blast, but he can't stop Sofina from bringing the stone statue of a copper dragon to life in the town square with animate object. Although copper dragons are usually pretty jovial in nature according to D&D lore, they are known to get greedy and vicious when their treasure hoards are threatened. This parallels the fact that Forge just lost his entire supply of riches. Because animate object requires concentration, Doric is able to stop the dragon by hitting Sofina with her sling. Sofina fights Simon using Bigby's hand, and he counters with Maximilian's Earthen Grasp. After an epic beatdown that embodies the game's round of combat as 6 seconds of continuous action, Sofina casts yet another time stop spell. But unlike last time, Simon is now a high enough level to counter it with his own magic. Kira is able to prove herself as a sleight of hand rogue and places a magic restraining cuff on Sofina's wrist just before she's able to cast the deadly spell Finger of Death. After Holga dies by Sofina's Red Wizard's blade, Edgin sees his wife's dragonfly for the last time, and he and Kira decide to use the Stone of Reawakening to bring Holga back. As they celebrate their win, Simon reminds them that Zastam won't be happy that they defeated his most loyal supporter, setting up the possibility of future sequels involving this big bad villain. Forge is brought to justice when Xenk finds him crawling through the Crypt Garden woods in the same exact place where he found the Evermore soldier who died trying to protect the Helm of Disjunction. As Forge begs for a pardon at Revel's End, he tries to present the council with his own tragic backstory. It turns out that when Holga called Forge a son of a bitch earlier and Xenk asked if his dastardly ways were due to his matriarchal upbringing, they were right! These are all the Easter eggs and details that I could find in D&D Honor Among Thieves, but I want to know what I missed in the comments. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Whitney Puppy, follow New Rockstars, subscribe to New Rockstars for more analysis of everything you love, and thanks for watching. Bye!